Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. So today we're going to do something really different. The context is I'm generally a really happy and hopeful person, but to be completely honest, recently I've found myself losing a lot of faith in people and America as a whole while watching the Republican Party demonize LGBTQ people in states across the country. I'm telling you, I've been so uncharacteristically upset, confused, hurt by these actions. And one of the things I like to do to kind of process my own thoughts is to write, whether that's journaling or some other form. And so when it came to this, I decided I would write a letter to Republicans. And initially I wasn't going to share it. It was just going to be for my own processing. But I decided for today's video, I just want to share that letter with y'all and present it in a way that hopefully will be meaningful. So here's the letter that I wrote that's just generally addressing all Republicans about the actions that their party is taking in going after LGBTQ people. Dear Republicans, as I'm writing this, legislation is being introduced, considered, and passed across the country, as well as other actions taken by your party that explicitly demonize LGBTQ people. Before you ignore what I'm about to say because you assume you will disagree with it, or I'll present this in a dishonest manner, I ask you, beg you, to hold on and give me a little bit of your time. To preface this, I'm not what your mind may conjure up as what a progressive or a person on the left looks like or where they come from. I grew up in Texas where I was surrounded by plenty of Republicans that I loved and respected who cared for people and seemed to be genuinely loving. It's that very fact that makes all of this so much more painful. I've spent my entire life hearing that the Republican Party is about freedom, and what makes America so amazing is those freedoms that we are able to enjoy. But now I watch day after day as that very same party works in state legislatures across our country to either erase or go after people based on their identities. Is that freedom? Isn't freedom allowing people to pursue happiness in any way they choose as long as they're not harming someone else? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as said in our Declaration of Independence. For so long, though, your party fought against that, for example, attempting to prevent people from being free to get married with who they choose. Fast forward to today, in my home state of Texas, the government led by Governor Greg Abbott is calling on state authorities to investigate parents for child abuse if they are suspected of providing gender-affirming care to their transgender youth. Now, I know Republicans, your ears just closed, but please let me explain this to you. What they're talking about, because keep in mind, kids don't get reassignment surgery where there are irreversible physical changes done to them. That is done after 18. So what Governor Abbott has instructed Child Protective Services to investigate as child abuse is gender-affirming medical care like puberty blockers. Puberty blockers are 100% reversible and are proven to lower depression and suicide rates in transgender minors who take them. All it does is temporarily halt puberty, but if you ever decide you actually want to go through your biological puberty, you can just stop taking them and it'll all go like it would have. But what this does for transgender youth is prevent them from developing all of the physical characteristics of a particular sex if they don't want to, which prevents countless suicides. Have some compassion. What the Texas state government is doing is ensuring countless parents won't give their kids these treatments because they are afraid of being investigated and having their kids taken away, and that will inevitably lead to more trans people committing suicide based on all of the available evidence on these treatments. Doctors have approved these treatments for the very purpose of benefiting the lives of trans youth. And think about it, if you are a trans kid and you know that your government wants to criminalize you and take you away from your parents because they helped you become more comfortable with who you are, how must that feel? Is that freedom? Answer me, Republicans. Parents are trying to support their children's identities in ways that are completely and totally reversible. And you want to take their kids away and send them to prison, the parents, for child abuse. That's freedom. Let me give you an example. This beautiful family, the Briggles, had Child Protective Services come to their house with the threat of taking their kid away simply because they were validating their child's identity. Quote, when we were notified of the allegations, it was as if the wind had been knocked out of us. We wanted to scream and cry, but we had no air. The couple wrote in a statement approved by their lawyer, raising a transgender child in Texas has been one long political emergency. And quite notably, even the investigator who came to the Briggles' home noticed clearly the parents are doing everything right. So harassment for absolutely no reason. Republicans, if you disagree with this, I need you to step up and speak out. We've all heard this quote before, but the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Don't do nothing. You don't have to understand what it must feel like to be transgender, but you can still advocate against demonizing them and hating them simply because of your party's ignorance. A widely discussed bill that has passed the Florida State House and Senate seeks to prohibit classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity, not prohibiting students from being encouraged to be a certain identity, simply getting rid of all conversations around what it means to be gay, for example. Even the hugest anti-LGBTQ people in the world would admit that LGBTQ people exist. So why would we erase their identities from public education? School is where you go to learn about the world, and part of that world is a multitude of different types of people. Part of American history is the fight for marriage equality. You seriously want to censor certain parts of our history. You're trying to cancel people's identities from our history books, even though we all admit it is a very real part of the American story. And what does that say to an LGBTQ kid growing up in a school where their very identity isn't allowed to be discussed? Answer that. Please, if you are someone playing dumb on this, pretending like lives won't be ruined, wake up. If you say a concept is banned from being taught, you are saying that it is wrong and broken and shouldn't even be known by our students. You are advocating for a country where certain people's identities and stories are ignored and actively stigmatized. Is that a free country where public government-funded schools are censoring the mere discussion of people that you may not totally support? Republicans, please answer me. Is that freedom? Now, when I ask Republicans what their justification is for these actions, they often cite their religious beliefs. Christianity specifically. They say, I don't support people being gay because of my religion, or I think you're either born a man or woman and you can't change based on my religion. So let's discuss Christianity and listen to your sacred book and the Messiah of Christianity, Jesus. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God remains in us, and his love is perfected in us. As I have loved you, so also you must love one another. And most notably, when Jesus was asked what the most important commandments were, he answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Love your neighbor as yourself. Tell me right now, is proposing anti-LGBTQ legislation in 14 state legislatures across the country, or mobilizing your party supporters to ban books in school libraries about LGBTQ people, or investigating parents for child abuse for affirming their children's identities loving? Is that loving? Tell me where it says in the Bible, love your neighbor unless they're gay. Tell me where it says love one another unless they identify as a different gender than the one they were assigned at birth. Tell me. I get that the Bible is a complicated and confusing body of work, but one thing it is hard to avoid noticing is how much loving one another is called for. And not just those in which you agree with, but even the ones you think are sinners. Jesus was notorious for loving and caring for the adulterers, tax collectors, and other outcasts of society. An example of this is people with leprosy were thought to be the most unclean, and no one gave them the time of day. But Jesus did what no one else would do. Not only was he loving and kind to them, he touched them, which in that time was believed to make you unclean. So you don't have to follow me on this, follow Jesus. So while I think marrying somebody of the same sex is beautiful, and being whatever gender identity you want is beautiful, I don't have to convince you of that to convince you that you should love regardless. Not to mention, our Constitution explicitly prohibits the establishment of a national religion, which sets up the separation of church and state. So why would we allow our state-run schools to be censored from teaching about certain beautiful people in our society? So Republicans, I beg you to stand against these actions by the party that you vote for. You don't have to support or understand LGBTQ people, but you can still love them. I truly believe a sign of a loving person is their ability to love someone or something they don't understand. So please, whether it is because you believe in people's freedom to be and express who they are, or you believe in Jesus, help stop LGBTQ hate.